Thank you very much, sir. Good morning, one and all present here. Respected Vice Chairman Dr. Arishankar Meghanathan, sir. Respected Director, sir. My dear colleagues and students. I have great pleasure in introducing Sri Anil Chopra. He's a Director of Bajaj Capital Group, a leading player in financial planning and investment advisory business. Mr. Chopra, a chartered accountant by profession, joined Bajaj Capital in 1984, and he has been instrumental in expanding the network of Bajaj Capital from 6 offices to 235 offices and from 60 employees to 4,000 highly talented human resources during his tenure as CEO till 2017. Mr. Anil Chopra has been widely quoted in all financial and general media on key financial developments in the industry. Mr. Chopra is also a certified financial planner. In fact, he is the first ever person from Indian financial services industry to enter the Office of Financial Planning Standards Board, FPSB, in Denver, USA in 1999, with a dream to bring the concept and profession of financial planning in India. Now I call upon Mr. Anil Chopra to address our PGDM students. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for those kind words and introduction. And dear students and friends, I'm so happy to be amongst you. I'm getting a lot of energy from all the young people, and I wish you great success, in your endeavors. And friends, like we say, generally that like a bird, it has 2 lives, one when it comes out of the egg and second when it starts flying. So similarly, I feel that every human being has 2 lives, once when you are born and second when you actually start your career or start your higher education. So I think now is the time that you are getting into, that phase which would actually mold the rest of your life. So whatever decisions you take in next few weeks, few months, 1 or 2 years, you actually decide as to what kind of quality of life, you would lead for, rest of your, may all of you live, to be centurions more than 100 years. So friends, I'm sure all of you have already taken a very bright decision of joining this prestigious educational institution, which will prepare you for higher achievements in your life. And I wish all of you great success. Now coming back to me, friends, like I was introduced, I'm a chartered accountant by profession. I'm also a certified financial planner, and I take more pride in talking about my certified financial planner qualification, which is CFP, certified financial planner. It's a new profession, so I would like to talk about it next few minutes, and would like to make you interested, if some of you could also think of joining this profession and having a bright career ahead of you. So friend, this profession of financial planning is a relatively new profession. It started only about 45 years ago in US, and now it has spread to about 30 odd countries in the world. And there are about 200,000 certified financial planners across the globe. And in India, we have about 6,000-7,000, and still it's growing profession. So now just to tell you that what does a certified financial planner do? I'm sure all of you know what a chartered accountant does, and what are the other professions. So here, let me start by sharing with you the 2 oldest professions, in the world are legal and medical, right? I'm sure all of you know that, so, and both these professions, they thrive, whether it's a doctor or it's a lawyer, or whether we call it liar or lawyer, it's up to you, but that's lawyer and doctors. But these 2 old professions thrive on the difficulties in the human life. If you think of doctors, they do a great job. They are like gods, but they thrive in this world only when there is things like, pandemic like Corona, or, if they want their businesses to grow, it depends upon, what new illnesses are coming and, how they can treat them, etc. So they are only dealing with people in trouble, people in pain, and they help those people come out of those pain. So that is why we call them gods, but it's a great profession. Then talking about legal profession. Legal profession, again, friends, their business thrives when there are disputes in the society, when there are quarrels, when there is crime, etc., and then their role comes in. So for them to grow their business, they are expecting that there should be more such, negative things. But when it comes to profession of financial planners, we are so blessed that we only pray for prosperity. because our business grows when people become prosperous, when they earn more money, when they have so much money that they want to know what to do with it, right? So that's the difference, that you would be dealing only with happy people. If you plan to become a certified financial planner like me, then the rest of your life you would be dealing with people who are successful, people who are happy, people who have more money than than they need, and that's why they need financial planners. Now, coming to what does a financial planner does, so his role is to help his clients achieve their financial goals. That is a one-line definition. That if you become a financial planner, rest of your life you will be meeting different people, successful people. There could be professors, doctors, defense services people, businessmen, from any walk of life, and you would be helping them achieve their financial goals. So it means you would be partner with them in their prosperity. So it's a lifelong relationship. Family doctor people have, but they don't want to see them, very often in their home. But a family financial planner is somebody where all the family members would love to meet him again and again, so that they can grow their wealth and they can become more prosperous. So friends, that is the general concept. But now let me take you through the nitty-gritty of it. First of all, of course, to become a certified financial planner, 4 things are very important. 4 things. And these are known as 4 E's. So what are these E's? These E's are education, examination, experience, and ethics. And you can apply these 4 E's to any other profession also, but in our profession, we give a lot of importance to these 4 E's. So education, obviously, if you want to become a certified financial planner, you have to go through the curriculum, you have to go through the various courses, various disciplines, of tax planning, retirement planning, estate planning, investment planning, etc., etc. So education is very important. Then just education is not enough. You have to pass the examination also. There are 6 modules. And if you pass all the 6 modules, then you're given the CFP mark, which is like, MBBS, or like MBA, but this is much more, coveted and valuable than some of the normal degrees that you know, because there are very few in the world, certified financial planners. So education, examination. Then third is experience. Just like you wouldn't like to deal with, a doctor who has just come out of, internship, etc., or a lawyer who just started his practice. Similarly, to be able to render high quality services, experience is very important. So one has to take experience by working under some certified financial planners for a few months, couple of years, so that you are able to understand the nuances of financial planning and then give the best services. And friends, 4 very important E is ethics. Because we all know that in financial advisory businesses, a lot of wrong things can happen, and you must be reading them, the financial frauds which keep happening in our society. But as certified financial planners, we have to uphold, the sanctity of our profession by being very, very, very ethical. And to define ethics in just few words, of course, ethics can be a full fat book on which, professor can teach you for full 1 year. But here I'm just telling you in 2 minutes. So being ethical means just think from the client's point of view. If you will always do whatever is correct from the client's point of view and not from your point of view, that itself will make you ethical to a large extent. When I was being introduced, you were told that I have been working with Bajaj Capital group of companies for 37 years now. I started my career in 1984 with Bajaj Capital, and 2021, still I'm there. And when I joined, senior chairman, Mr. K.K. Bajaj sir, who interviewed me, and he's still my mentor, guru, boss, and God, and I have a lot of regards for him. He told me one thing, that he said, Anil, treat your every client as your own retired father who doesn't have a chance to earn again, and give him that advice which you will give to your own father. So that is what got stuck to my mind, and that is what we tell everybody. We have 4,000 people working in our company now. Every person, when he or she goes through induction, like all of you are going through this induction, so they are told very categorically that, look, this is the principle you have to follow for the rest of your life. Treat every client as your own retired father or mother, and give him that advice which you will give to your own family members, so that you are ethical. So ethics is very, very important. So now, friends, telling you a little bit more about this profession of financial planning, just to arouse your curiosity as to what you will be doing if you think of going on this path. It's a 6-step process. The financial planning is a 6-step process. Of course, you have to deal with clients. Just like a doctor has patients, A lawyer has his own clients. So similarly, financial planners also have clients. Of course, we deal with individuals and families and businesses, etc. But mostly it is with individuals and individuals with good amount of money. I told you rich and famous, successful people. Okay, so what are the 6 steps? The 6 steps are that first is that we define our relationship with client, right? That how often we will meet, what are our services, what are our fees, right? So we define our relationship. That's the first step. So that you tell entirely this, so the client is not in any dark as to what he should expect from you in the years of relationship. Then the second is data gathering, which is finding out the current financial position of the client, right? That he will do only after you have established the relationship. So finding out, where is he working, how much is income, how much are expenses, how much is he saving, children, what are the liabilities, education still pending or not, marriage still pending or not, etc., etc. So to find the exact financial position of the client. Then the third is to establish his financial goals. There are 5 financial goals which all of us have. Of course, the list can be 20, 30, 50, 100 also, but 5 are the most common financial goals, right? And these 5 most common financial goals are children education, children marriage, buying a house, buying a car, and the 5th one is retirement planning. And this is globally certified. This is not only for Chennai or for Delhi. It is even for Sydney or for Berlin or for New York. There are only 5 most common financial goals which everybody has. Children education, children marriage, house, car, and retirement planning. So we will sit with the client, we'll understand how many children, whether education is over, what kind of education, how much amount would be required. Do you want to send your son to Wharton or you want to send your daughter to Oxford? In UK to do masters, it would require 50 lakhs, 75 lakhs. You want to send your son to ISP in Hyderabad, it would require 40 lakhs or whatever. So this planning, all these goals are established. Similarly, marriage. Then house, whether he already has a house, he still has to buy a house, etc. Car, of course, most car has become a necessity these days, and retirement planning. So that's the third step. Then the fourth step is, after finding the goals, to evaluate various options. For children education, what are the good options? For house, what are the good options? For retirement planning, what are the good options? Then the 5th is to present those options to the client and then construct a financial plan, which is like a document. It's a 10, 12-page document, which you put everything in paper, give it to the client, explain it to him, and then start implementing it. And the last plan is review and continuous review and revise if need be. For example, client today may be working, XYZ company, his salary is 300,000 rupees a month. After 2 years, he has moved his job, and now his salary is 500,000 rupees a month. So obviously, he can now do better planning. So whenever there is a change in the person's life, we need to review and revise. So these are the 6 steps, right? So I'm just trying to put the entire curriculum of financial planning in just 30, 40 minutes. Of course, these 6 steps, if you go through the course, it will take you 1 year. And for each step, there will be 5 or 6 lectures in detail as to how to go about, this, etc. But I'm trying to just give you a glimpse. And now, friends, then comes the very important part of how to construct a financial plan. So constructing a financial plan is something similar to constructing a house, which all of you know. I'm sure you must have seen, maybe your own house or maybe somewhere in the locality. So how a house is constructed? First of all, foundation is laid, right? Without foundation, no house can be constructed. So in financial plan, the foundation is insurance, right? Insurance means protection. Protection of family is the first goal of every individual. So nobody can do a better financial planning unless he or she has taken enough life insurance, health insurance, critical insurance, etc., etc. So if you become a good financial planner, you will have to be expert on all types of insurances: life, general, health, critical illnesses. So that's the first foundation. Without that, financial plan can't be constructed. I can't think of anybody who has a lot of investment, but he doesn't have insurance. Because if something happens to him, the whole family would be aware. Right? So that's the first foundation. Then comes, after you laid the foundation through insurance, then comes the 4 walls. Right? So house can't be built without the 4 walls. What are these 4 walls? These 4 walls of investments. Right? Now we have to start constructing the house. So investments. So investments are, friends, there are 4 options in this globe where people can invest. There is no 5th. And I'm sure as students of finance, you may already know them. What are these 4 walls of investment? These are debt, equity, gold, and real estate. Debt, I'm sure you know, deposits, provident funds, bonds, etc. Equity, which is stock market. Gold, I'm sure you all understand gold. Chennai is full of tea. Nagar, you go there, big gold shops are there. And then, friends, finally, the real estate or the property, right? So these are the 4 broad investment options which are used globally. Again, whatever I'm talking is not only Chennai, Delhi, or India. It's worldwide. There is nothing fifth. Debt, equity, gold, and real estate. So as a financial planner, you will have to be expert on what are the good debt options, how to invest in equity, what type of, how much one should invest in gold and whether paper gold or physical gold, and then real estate, whether commercial or residential. So now you have constructed the house, you have put the 4 walls, but still the house is not complete unless you have a ceiling or a roof over it, isn't it? So the roof, friends, is retirement planning. Just think how beautiful it is, how you're getting into somebody's life. First, you gave him good insurances, life insurance, health insurance, critical illnesses insurance, and protected the family. So family is feeling protected. And if something happens to me, corona or anything, at least my children, my wife, my parents, they're all, will be taken care of because I have taken sufficient insurance. Similarly, health. If some unforeseen comes up, at least my savings won't be impacted because I have good health insurance. So you have taken care of that. Then you have created the 4 walls, debt, equity, gold, and real estate. The person is feeling very well planned now. But unless you put the roof over it, which is retirement planning, again, he would feel helpless. So retirement planning, there are specific options which are excellent for retirement planning. If I just mention few names like things like senior citizen savings schemes, Pradhan Mantri Vay Bandhan Yojana, these are some of the good schemes. SWP, which is systematic withdrawal plan, from debt funds. So there are, and then NPS, which is National Pension System, annuity plans. So there are some excellent plans which are very, very important for retirement planning. So just imagine that just by becoming a financial planner, how much you are learning. All about investments, all about insurance, retirement planning. But still, house is not complete unless you put door on it and put a lock on it. Otherwise, the thief would come and take everything away, isn't it? So you need to put door and a lock onto it, complete the house. And that door and lock is tax planning. Yes, friends, tax planning. So as financial planner, you would also be expected to be expert in tax planning. And you help your clients to reduce, minimize their taxes legally, whatever possible. So that is all, you would be expected to do in your career with every client. You may be having 50 clients, 75 clients, 100 clients, 125 clients. Again, coming back to the last session which you were having, the doctor, which is job versus entrepreneurship. Here you have both the options. As a certified financial planner, either you can be practicing on your own, just like a doctor has a clinic. So you can have your own office where you're dealing with clients, you're charging them fees, and you're taking them through those 6-step process. Remember the 6-step process I told you 10 minutes ago? Establish a relationship, understand his current position, and find out his financial goals, then do the various alternatives, evaluate them, prepare a plan, and then review and revise it, right? And of course, the 4 things you remember: the education, exam, experience, and ethics. So all that is forming part of your life now. And then finally, you are constructing the financial plan, just like constructing a house. Now, friends, coming to what are the skills required to be a great financial planner, right? What are the skills required? So there are 6 skills which are required to be a great financial planner. And of course, these skills are also required in any other profession also. But because we are discussing the profession of financial planner, so that's why I would talk more about it. So of course, the first skill is knowledge. Without knowledge, of course, you can't succeed. So knowledge will come from, of course, by becoming a CFP and by reading the right kind of newspapers, because you are in the world of finance, which is ocean. So now what you need to do, you need to read pink newspapers, like Mint, like Economic Times, like Business Standard, etc., to get the knowledge, to remain updated. Because your clients will expect you to remain updated, whether it's tax planning, retirement planning, any new insurance plan, any new health insurance changes, etc. So knowledge is the first thing which is given. But we must know what are the sources of knowledge. So we get knowledge from right kind of television channels. If we while away our time looking at some entertainment, then of course nothing can happen. But we need to look at ET Now, G Business, CNBC, so that we get the right kind of, we listen to industry experts and our knowledge is updated, right? So going through websites, SEBI website, IRDA website, mutual fund website, etc., etc. So that's knowledge. Then we also get knowledge by talking to our seniors, by talking to our colleagues, and also by talking to clients. Sometimes clients know more than us. They come and teach us. They come and tell us that, look, this thing is there. Why don't you study that and tell me? So that's one thing. But if you have knowledge, complete knowledge, you are still only about 20% as a successful financial planner. A lot of other skills are also required. Without those skills, just knowledge is nothing. But knowledge is very important. The second skill, friend, which is required is, and which I'm sure all of you know, is the communication. Which is, if you have great knowledge, but if you can't explain it, if you can't say it in the language which the client understands, some clients may want you to speak only in Tamil. Some clients may want you to speak only in Hindi or in English, or whatever, high-class English, normal English, mixed English. You have to speak in the language which the client understands and not the language which you know best, right? So communication skills are very, very important, because if you use a lot of jargons, because financial industry is full of jargons, and if clients don't understand it, then you will not win his trust, and your relationship will not go far. So to improve your communication skills, one, you should know 2, 3, 4 languages: Tamil, Hindi, English. If you also know Telugu and Malayalam, of course, because you live in southern India, that would be very handy for you. But there are classes within English also. There is a high British English, then there is a normal English, and there is a Tamil mixed English or a Hindi mixed English. So you need to quickly find out as to what the client is more comfortable, and then switch to that language. So communication skills, and also speak in very fluid kind of a way, so that even a housewife can understand, what you're trying to tell him or her. So this is so if you have knowledge and you have communication skills also, so you are almost 40% there, right? Still, a lot of other skills are required to be a great, successful financial planner. The third skill which is required is more important than the first two, is listening skills, right? So in our business, in financial planning business, unless you listen to client, you can't give him good advice, right? And for listening skills is not easy for people to acquire it. One needs to work very hard on it. Listening skill means that you look into the client's eyes, like I'm looking into the eyes of Pavitra now. Pavitra, how are you? Pavitra, or Satya, or Vignesh. Vignesh, can you look into my eyes? I'm looking into your eyes, but you're not looking into my eyes. Now you're looking into my eyes. So when you look into the eyes of clients and talk, then you are listening with more intent. Then the client would feel that, yes, he is interested in what I'm talking. If you go and client is sitting in front of you and you say, yes, sir, please tell me, sir, where are you working? And you're looking in your drawer and you're opening your pen and you're looking at your phone, then client would know that this guy is too busy, he's not so much interested. So you have to leave everything. Just focus on what client is saying and repeat what he's saying. If he says, I have retired from railways. Oh, okay, sir, you retired from railways. It's not that everything you have to repeat, but if you repeat few things, client would immediately get this feeling that this person is actually interested in what I'm telling him, and he will do a great job, right? So listening skill, again, is such a topic on which, there can be, one can talk hours and hours, and 5 or 6 sessions can be done only on how to improve listening skills. But here only I can tell you so much, that one has to be very great listener. Another thing about listening skill is that supposing you have a 30 minutes meeting with a client, then if in that 30 minutes meeting, if you have spoken 20 minutes and client has spoken 10 minutes, it was a bad meeting. Then nothing can happen. You shouldn't speak more than 10 minutes. Client should speak at least 20 minutes, right? Then only, because then means you listened more than what you spoke. If you are nervous, if you are not so confident, you will go and start speaking in English something, just to impress him. But that would not work at all. You have to ask open-ended questions and be patient and listen. So listening skill, friends. So 3 skills so far: knowledge, communication skills, listening skills. Then, friends, even you have these 3 things, still you can't be a great financial planner unless you have the 2 remaining skills. You're only 60% there. The 4th skill, friends, is social skills. Social skills, because this is a relationship business. He is trusting you with information which he may not even tell his wife, or a wife may not tell her husband, that what is his income, how he's planning, how much is he planning to give to his sister, how much is he planning to give to his mother, what kind of will is he writing, etc., etc. So he is sharing very, very confidential information with you. That can happen only when you develop a strong relationship. And for that, you need social skills. Social skills are that you should be a smiling, pleasing personality, right? And not only talking purely all the time only on money or finance matters, but also taking interest in his personal life. For example, you go to his house, to give him advice. Generally, they will invite you. Unlike every time they come to your office, sometimes you also go to their office. So you go to his home and you're sitting on his dining table or in sofa chair somewhere, and you see, a small child running around. And if you say, sir, your son, sir, what class is he? So you think the client will feel happy or he will get angry? Obviously, he'll feel happy. That it's not that you're only come to discuss, this insurance, that mutual fund, etc. You're also taking interest in his life, right? So you say, okay, sir, that school, or great school, sir, and I'm sure he'll have a bright future. So this is how you develop, social skills. And then you become a part of the family, the client's family. Then clients start calling you for their children's birthdays, for the marriage in their families, because you become a family member. So that is the hallmark of a good, successful financial planner. You must have strong, high quality social skills. And friends, because the time is less, so that's why I'm in a hurry. And the last, but the most important skill is still pending. Even if you have these 5 skills, you are not anywhere near to the high class, successful financial planner. And the last skill and the most important skill is the after sales service, what we call the orientation to service, which is that a lot of people in our industry are only taking care of clients until they have done a sale, until they have sold some insurance, some mutual fund, some fixed deposit, some bonds, and then they want to run away because their target is done, right? But successful financial planners are only those who give equal importance to complaints, services after the sales, which is known as after sales service. So anybody who is not good at after sales service will not succeed. And for that, one has to have a service attitude, because in service, you will not make any money. For example, if a client says, my dear financial planner, sir, you have done these 10 investments and I have done it, on your advice. Now I'm changing my address from Bangalore to Mysore. So please get all the addresses changed. Now this is a service request, right? This will not give you any money, any revenue. But if you show equal enthusiasm, yes, sir, it's my duty, sir, I will get it done. Within 2 days, you'll have everything done. So that is what will win the heart of the client, which is to be equally enthusiastic, giving all kinds of services, whether they are revenue generating or non-revenue generating, because clients are expecting this from you. So this after sales service or orientation to serve the client beyond, where you are making money is the hallmark of a very, very successful financial planner. So I'm also looking at the time, that how much time I have, right? So friends, these are some of the points, which I wanted to share with you in order to become, a certified financial planner. And I would check with Dr. Thomas or Dr. Deendayal sir if you would want to open the forum for any question answer. Otherwise, I can go on and on and on. Or any specific topic which you want me to cover.
Sir, I think fabulous talk within this, limited time before Dr. Thomas comes into the picture. I should say, I mean, it's unbelievable the way you covered, so many things within this stipulated time. But I'm looking forward for a masterclass on investments for our students and for all of us. And we might, plan for a joint, FDP or something like that for the market. Might be MDP, Management Development Program, because the kind of experience you have is tremendous. So you are tremendous. And specifically, I like the skills you talked about, the knowledge, communication, listening skills, social skills, and most important, we all are salespeople. So I belong to the sales arena. So after sales service is very important. Where
number one.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Because once sales is done and money is received, then, you treat as if, he's a state child. So I think you are absolutely correct. Wonderful deliberation. Over to Professor Thomas to conduct the question answer session. I know students are excited to ask questions to sir. So over to you, Professor Thomas.
Yes. Good morning, students. Now the floor is open to you. You can ask few questions to the sir.
Yes, I can see Satya was the first one, Priya.
was
Yes,
very
we are.
much excited. Yes, sir. I want to ask you in between also. I should not interrupt you, sir. That's why I'm waiting and raise
No.
first.
Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. I have a like. What is your best advice for us at this stage that is self-planning, self-financial planning for us, which will help us to grow as an entrepreneur as well as like our personal and financial life to balance and to become an entrepreneur.
Yes, great. So you see, financial literacy is also very low in our country. You may be very highly educated in whatever you are doing, but I have seen it, in my 37 years of experience that very few people are actually financially literate or financially savvy in terms of taking decisions. So it's very important that we start with ourselves. First, we set our own house in order, and for that, if you are already earning, then of course one can start, allocating the savings also. But if you haven't started earning, then you have to start with your parents and with your elders in your family who are already working, and start, sharing some very simple thumb rules. So some very simple thumb rules, if I were to tell you to set the house in order. So first is that how much one should save. That is something, a question which is I am asked most often, that how much should I save? It doesn't matter whether your salary is 50,000 rupees a month, 100,000 rupees a month, 500,000 rupees a month, or 1 crore rupees a month. One must at least save 30%. So that's a kind of an answer which is there for forever. So, but we need to understand this, that what this 30% means. Here, important thing is minimum 30%. Minimum is more important. So there is more emphasis on minimum and 30%, right? So now I think it would be clear to you that why are we saying 30%? Because whatever is your lifestyle, whether you are earning 200,000 a month, 1 crore a year, it's more important that you save 30%. But this 30% has to be of your gross income and not of net income. Some people make this mistake. Your salary is 100,000 rupees, but your take home is 70,000 rupees. So they save 30% of 70,000. That's not enough. You have to first save 30,000 out of your 100,000. Then from balance 70,000, you pay your income tax, your provident fund, your EMIs, your rent, etc. So that's the first thing. But then the second thing comes up is that where to invest these 30% savings, or 30 or even more. How to invest, when to invest. So these are the critical questions. So this is one thumb rule which you should apply. Then the second thumb rule is that one has to allocate one's savings to 4 things, which are debt, equity, gold, and real estate. I told you, in my earlier session that there are 4 options. Yes. But how to divide the savings into these 4 options? There are some thumb rules there also. Just to quickly tell you, because again, I am a speaker.
Yes,
I take webinars. I take webinars every Wednesday, every Friday, every Saturday. So sometimes I forget the time, that how much time I have, and I go on and on, and also stop me if I go very long. But just to quickly tell you how to divide this 100 rupees into these 4: debt, equity, gold, and real estate. 10 rupees should go into gold. Okay, so 10% is a standard answer to gold. Gold is very, very dear to Indian community, to all of us. I'm not saying ladies, of course, love it. Our mothers, our wives, our sisters, but still, gold has stood the test of the time. It has been there for hundreds of years. 500 years ago, there were no stock exchange, no mutual fund, no insurance company, but gold was there, right? And even today, gold is there. So gold allocation is 10%, but that should include physical gold as well as paper gold. And now there should be more emphasis on paper gold, because all of us have a lot of physical gold. You check with your parents, they have lockers. I haven't looked into your lockers, but I know a lot of gold is lying there. 70% of India's gold is lying in India's lockers, in banks. Yes. Now the time has come to go to paper gold, which is sovereign gold bonds, gold mutual fund, etc. So 10% to gold. Then very quickly, equity. Equity is the most promising investment option. There, the thumb rule is 100 minus your age should be invested in equity. So if your age today is, if I can just guess, maybe 20 years or so, 25, then 75% of your savings should be invested in equity. Supposing you are getting, say, 2,000 rupees per month, say, pocket money from your parents, if you haven't started earning, or say you are having 5,000 rupees per month. And if your age is 20 years now, 100 minus 20 is 80. So 80% of that should go into equity. So out of 5,000, 4,000 rupees per month should go into equity. But how? SIP, systematic investment plan, right? So that is, and then balance should go into debt. Debt includes, that provident fund and bonds and FD, etc. So these are, some of the thumb rules. And then obviously health insurance and life insurance, I told you, as the foundation. So again, to talk about starting with your own family, check with your parents whether they have enough health insurance, and the definition of enough health insurance can differ from family to family. Standard rule is minimum 10 lakh rupees of policy to cover all the family members. And then life insurance, how much? 10 times of your annual income. If your annual income is 500,000, you must have a life insurance of 50 lakhs of rupees. If your annual income is 20 lakhs, you must have a life insurance policy of 2 crores of rupees. So there are like this several thumb rules, which I can go on and on and on. But I told you 4 or 5. 30% you must save, 100 minus will raise into equity, 10% in gold, balance in debt. Okay. So I'll take other.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Shriram is waiting. Shriram.
Sir, hello, sir. I'm Sriram.
Yes, Shriram.
Sir, I have a doubt, sir. Sir, as a beginner, do you have to focus on short-term investment or long-term investment, sir?
Okay, great. So short-term or long-term, right? So friends, there are certain investments which can give you good returns only over long-term, and then there are certain investments which are only good for short-term. So it's not that you first take an investment and then decide whether I'll do short-term or long-term. You first have to define your goal. Supposing your goal is coming in 6 months from now, so which is a short-term. Let us first define what is long-term and what is short-term. You know, so I don't have time to take responses from you. I would have taken it, you know, if I was physically present there, but I know that you will give different answers. Let me tell you what is the definition of long-term and short-term and medium-term. Long-term is anything which is more than 7 years. Okay, please remember it, more than 7 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, all that is long-term, right? And less than 1 year is short-term, and between 1 to 7 is mid-term. So now, first you have to decide for which goal are you saving. Supposing, you know, your parents are going to buy a house, say 6 months from now, and they already have saved 20 lakhs of rupees. So now they want to invest this. So this is a short-term goal, right? Because they will need the money within 6 months. So now if you suggest them that, okay, equity market is doing great, you know, we can quickly make some good money, that would be a wrong decision, because equity is only good for long-term. So short-term, debt, and that too, schemes like liquid funds, etc., or bank fixed deposits. And long-term, one can go for equity or real estate, etc. So first decide whether your goal is short-term or long-term, and then go for the investment option. And there are different investment options for different goals. Let me go to Harita. Harita.
Hello, sir. I have a specific question. The interest rate for the fixed deposit and savings account is now lying around 6%, whereas it has come down from 8.5%. So my question is that, what is the impact of this on our economy with regards to deposit, I'm asking?
Right. So I wish, and I can tell all of you, you know, if you want to gain more knowledge on these matters, you are most welcome to come and attend my webinars, which I do every Wednesday, 4:30 in Hindi, but that's in Hindi, so you don't come for that. Every Friday and every Saturday in English, right? So at 4:30 to 6, where I cover exactly this topic, Harita, which you just asked for. I spend about 7 or 8 minutes only on this topic. Okay, let me quickly tell you, friends, that another rule which is very important in financial planning is the rule of RRR. RRR is the real rate of return. The real rate of return. How we calculate the real rate of return? Return minus 2 things. What are those 2 things? Income tax and inflation. Okay, always remember that you know the returns, but that's not important. More important is the real rate of return, RRR, which is return minus income tax and inflation. So you chose very interesting topic, which is bank fixed deposit. Absolutely right that banks are giving only 5.5% interest currently. And if your father or you are in 20-30% tax bracket, you first reduce tax, another 1 to 1.5 will go as tax out of 5.5. You're left with 4%. And inflation, my dear friends, all students, I'm sure you all know it is 6.26% in our country. So what is the RRR of bank fixed deposit? It's negative. It's negative, right? And still, despite the real rate of return of bank fixed deposit being negative, because inflation is higher and there is income tax also, still it is the #1 investment option in our country. Biggest investment option in our country is bank fixed deposits. You know how much money is lying there? 1.5 crores. You have to put a lot of zeros if you are noting it down. 1 crore 50 lakh crores. is the amount lying in bank fixed deposits. And that is reason number one why our country is still labeled as a developing country. Because we haven't still come out of the bank fixed deposit syndrome. We haven't still learned financial literacy is low. That is why I'm urging all of you to embrace this financial planning profession. Come out first, be prepared yourself and then start educating the society around you. Tell them that there are other options where we can, get good real rate of return, so that we also become, a developed country. So you go to any so-called developed country, it's like US or Australia or Germany, whatever you call it. If you go and study there, the bank fixed deposits there would be much less, they say, as compared to mutual funds, just to take one example. So if you want to know which country is advanced country, just check these two things. How much people have invested in mutual funds, how much people have invested in banks. If people have invested more amount in banks, it's a developing country like India. In India, bank fixed deposit is 1.5 crores and mutual funds is only 33 lakh. But in US, in Canada, in France, in South Africa, in Singapore, in Hong Kong, any advanced country you see, mutual funds will have 2 or 3 times more than the bank fixed deposits. So it's a very sorry state of affairs, Harita. You're absolutely right. That is the reason why senior citizens are suffering in our country and they are not able to lead a good high quality life because they invest their money in simple things like bank fixed deposits where the real rate of return is negative and their lifestyle suffers. So over to Thivya, if I am correct, reading your name properly, Thivya?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
good morning, sir. It's a pleasure to meet you. And my question is, will the Forex Reserve will help in improving our economies?
Yes, obviously. Yes, of course. Now, first of all, we should feel blessed that India has gone through in last 10-15 years a great transformation. Earlier, as students of economics, you would know that population used to be considered as #1 problem for India, but now the demography is considered to be the #1 asset of India. So this has been a complete transformation, which means that our internal consumption itself is such a great driver of Indian economy that we don't need to depend so much, on exports like China. China is dependent highly on exports. And of course, they're still thriving and they're much bigger than us. They're 3 times bigger than us. But as far as India is concerned, we also have exports, but limited. And still we are not impacted that much because our demography is such that our young population, in the age bracket of say 15 to 40 is probably the largest in the world. And these people are highly productive. All of you are covered in that bracket only. So from that point of view, Forex reserves do not have that much importance now, and they are enough to finance our imports. So yes, if we have more Forex, even today, our Forex reserves are all-time high, of our history. And there is no issue. So that used to be a problem in 1991 when the rupee was devalued by Dr. Manmohan Singh, but not anymore. Okay, going to Pavitra, but there are 2 Pavitras here. Pavitra Ramakrishnan.
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir.
Morning, Pavitra.
So I have a question. In any investment, there will be some sort of risks in any investment. So if you are assessing your client for any financial planning, how will you assess your client's risk-taking abilities?
Yes. So very important question, very academically oriented question. It is part and parcel, like when doctor would come for any ailment, he'll check your pulse, right? He will put a thermometer in your mouth, basic things, BP, etc. So similarly, as a financial planner, first thing that you will do is you will assess the risk-taking ability before you give any advice to your clients. So that's very, very important. But sometimes you even have to change the risk-taking ability of your client because clients may not be fully literate or very mature in terms of what is good for them. Because some people are so much, averse to, for example, investing in mutual funds that they feel, no, my money would go away. And they are only happy investing in bank fixed deposits where the real rate of return is negative because they are averse to taking risk. So we need to get into very meaningful conversations with clients that risk is not bad. Risk is very important. No risk, no return. So for example, how I tell to my clients is that, sir, you are taking risks with your life every day. They say, how? No, I'm not taking a risk. No, sir. Every day when you go to market, you cross the road, sir, isn't it? He said, yes. I said, then when you cross the road, don't you take risk? because unless you will cross the road, you will not be able to do your thing. But what you do, you stand on the one side of the road and you look left and you look right, and when you see that nothing is coming, then you cross the road. Or you cross the road when, on a zebra crossing, when the traffic has stopped. But you cross the road after taking. So similarly, risk needs to be minimized. Risk cannot be eliminated. Risk needs to be managed. But without taking proper risk, nobody can prosper in this world. So risk is very, very good for everybody's health. And risk-taking ability can be judged by asking, some open-ended questions about, the people's flexibility or affordability. Supposing, if we ask our client that, sir, if you invest, say 10 lakh rupees, and if it becomes 9 lakh rupees after 1 year, how will you feel? If you say, oh, no, I don't want any such thing. It's my very hard-earned money. So we know that this person can't take any risk, right? But you still have to tell that, sir, over a long period, if we look at various options are bank fixed deposits, national saving certificates, bonds, investing in equity and real estate. And you explain to him, and sir, empirical evidence that in last 30, 40, 50 years, all those people who invested in equity with a long-term horizon have made higher money, have multiplied, created wealth than those who put their money only in post office schemes, etc. So that way you can educate the clients, mold them, and encourage them to take little bit risk, not too much risk. Okay, so now over to Nanda Kishore. There is Nanda Kishore, yes. You have to unmute yourself, Nanda Kishore, sir.
Hello,
yes.
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir, it's a degrees help to improve the economy.
Sorry, say again.
Is FOI degrees help to improve the economy?
FOI? No, I'm not getting your question.
FOI.
You're asking about repo rate, sir.
Repo rate.
Repo rate. Okay. Repo rate. Repo rate, the rate at which the Reserve Bank is lending to the banks. Yes. So obviously, currently we are in a state of affairs where the inflation has shown its heads up and it is hovering a little over than the repo rate or what banks are offering on 1 year bank fixed deposit, etc. So we are in a ticklish situation and government is trying to control the inflation. But because of Corona, our economy has taken a hit. Our GDP has taken a hit. And from a low base, now we are trying to get into, higher activity. You must be reading every day that earlier World Bank and IMF were predicting 10% GDP growth for India, but now they're saying 9.5%. And that is because we contracted. That is because our economy, shrunk due to Corona in the last 12 months. So government is trying to encourage by keeping the repo rate low, by encouraging industry to come forward and to take more loans, to take more credit, and to create more capacity, to create more employment. So yes, current low repo rate policy is to give spur to the activity so that the economy comes back on track. So we must have complete faith in our Reserve Bank of India and their repo rate policy. They are doing a great job.
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank
you very much. Since
yes, Thomas, do we have more time or we want to close it here now?
Yes, sir. Due to paucity of time, we are closing the question and answer session now.
But Professor Thomas, I have a request.
Yes,
I have a request
sir.
that we can think of certified financial planners conclave.
Yes, sir.
Let us request Anil sir to help us and guide us.
Sure.
So that he has so many friends in the industry. I mean, he's a veteran. Everybody knows him.
Yes,
so
sir.
if he can select 2-3 financial planners, and we will have that. Then what will happen?
Yes,
we all will get an opportunity to interact with him for 1 hour at least, a minimum like 1.5 hours. Beyond that also he will not reveal because he is a professional. Anyway,
Yes,
he is
sir.
helping the institute. That's the reason he is very happy to so we can request him for a longer session in a conclave. Is it fair enough, sir?
Sure.
Yeah. Anytime, I would be happy to come back and do more sessions. Whatever students
we need your help. We need your help. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. Over to Professor Thomas.